Good morning. It's been pretty chill here so far today, and I've just kind of done some video editing and messed around on my Ravelry pages and just relaxed really. So I'm gonna go out in the kitchen now. I'm gonna make some apple pancakes for lunch again today. We had some a couple of days ago. I'm gonna make some more because I have quite a few eating apples that want using. The cooking apples I can put in things like puddings and stuff. The eating apples I find I have less recipes that I tend to use, or maybe we just use up the cooking ones quicker, I'm not sure. But we have, I can put eating apples in cakes and stuff, and I obviously put eating apples alongside cooking apples in an apple pie, but we don't eat eating apples just kind of as they are. So one of the ways I like to use them is in apple pancakes. So it's really simple. It's just like grated apple and a bunch of pancake ingredients like flour and what have you. So, and I don't have like a kind of a set recipe. It's just kind of like kind of guidelines. So I'm gonna nip in the kitchen now whilst the sun's out and get those done while John's nipped to the shop to pick up some more milk and some supplies. So I was doing some research and I was trying to figure out what cooking apples are called in America, and found out that there isn't such a thing. Well, there is, but there isn't. So in America you just kind of call apples by their variety names, which we do in this country as well. So we have like Golden Delicious and Gala and Granny Smiths and Bramley and so on. Bramley apples are what we would consider cooking apples, and Bramleys are generally the only cooking apple you can buy in this country. I guess if you lived somewhere like down south like Suffolk or something where there's more apple orchards, I'm sure you can buy other cooking apple varieties from local orchards, but from like the supermarket your cooking apples are Bramleys. And then everything else you can usually buy in the supermarket is an eating apple, what we call an eating apple, one you can take out the bag and literally just eat it. But I found out that in America you don't have that kind of cooking apple terminology. So if you wanted an apple, say for an apple pie, you'd probably choose a specific type of variety. If you want apples for eating, you choose a certain type of variety. And I don't think apple crisp, like we would call it apple crumble, so like fruit with like a crumbly topping on. I don't know if you use eating apples or what we would, or Bramleys in that. But so what I was trying to say is that I don't even know where I was going to try to say that, but what I also discovered was in America you would consider Granny Smith apple almost like we would consider a cooking apple. Lots of people don't eat Granny Smith apples, thinking they're too sour and that you would add sugar to them and cook with them in something like a pie or something like that. Whereas in this country, to us, a Granny Smith is an eating apple. You wouldn't really think of cooking with a I mean, you could cook with a Granny Smith, but it's not what you would think of to cook with. So a Golden Delicious is quite sweet, and a Gala is kind of sweet, and a Braeburn is more on a kind of a drier, less sweet side, and then a Granny Smith is quite tart, but a Granny Smith is still considered an eating apple, one you would buy to put in your lunchbox or just to pick out the fruit bowl. The only apple in the UK that you can readily buy we would consider to cook with in like a pie or in a crumble or something would be a Bramley apple, which I just thought was really interesting and probably a bit of a ramble. So our cooking apples are Bramleys. I found out we have 2 cooking apple trees, which will both be Bramleys because that's all the varieties that I bought, or had my mum fetch up rather. So we have Bramleys, and these are cooking apples. You wouldn't dream of eating these on their own. They're so sour you can only really, I mean you can eat them I suppose if you really wanted to, kind of like sucking on a lemon slice. There's nothing stopping you sucking on a lemon slice. So they're very sour and you have to mix sugar with them to make them normally edible. Whereas a Granny Smith apple is tart, but not so tart that you can't eat without adding sugar to it. all our eating apples are either Braeburn or James Grieve. That says I did receive a James Grieve and a Braeburn, I'm pretty sure. But I'm not 100% sure on the James Grieve, but definitely Braeburn. But again, Braeburns are kind of like, I don't know if I've got one that isn't kind of going wrinkly now. Most of our eating apples are kind of going over, they go over quite quickly. This one doesn't look like a Braeburn. It's kind of waxy and quite light, although like I said, it's starting to kind of go on for a little bit. I think this one might be James Grieve. Whereas, I don't know if I can find a Braeburn. I think I've used most of them up, but it's just they're going over now. A Braeburn usually has more of a russety colour. This would have been green when I picked it. It's going overripe. It's going a bit wrinkly and a bit soft. So that's why it's gone yellow rather than being green. Yeah, that's my apple. My apple ramble for today. But I'm going to make pancakes. I'm going to be using the eating apples. Like this, they're going a bit wrinkly now. So I'm going to peel them and grate a bunch into a bowl, and then I'm going to add all my other ingredients to the grated apple afterwards. That way the apple isn't sitting around too much. So like I was saying, it's kind of more guidelines than actual measurements with this, but I'll kind of show you what I'm going to do. So I've actually ended up grating up quite a bit of apple, a little bit more than I did the other day. So I'm going to adjust my kind of quantities accordingly. So for this amount, this is kind of 2 people. So instead of using 1 large egg, which I did the other day with a little bit less apple than this, and these pancakes are more apple than pancake. They're kind of bordering more on a fritter than a pancake, but loads of grated apple. And because it's slightly more than I would normally do, I've got 2 kind of medium-sized eggs instead of 1 large one, which is what I did the other day. So they're going in. Just kind of break them up a bit. And then I'm going to add the rest of my ingredients. So for me and John, 2 people, I'm going to do 2 ounces of flour. I have plain flour, but this should have like kind of self-raising flour, or I've got plain flour and I'm going to use baking powder to make it self-raising flour. So I put 2 ounces in there. So I'm going to put kind of half a tablespoon of baking powder in. And then I'm going to add a spoonful of brown sugar. Doesn't need a lot because they're sweet eating apples, but it just helps bring out the sweetness. So I'm just going to put, I don't know, about half an ounce of brown sugar in. And I'm going to mix that up. Just break up those brown sugar lumps. And just mix that up, and it'll be really stiff at this point. So just going to work it in best I can. And then I'm going to use enough milk to make it almost a pancake batter, but not quite. I don't want it, I want it to be a little bit thick to begin with, because I'm going to add a little bit of melted butter to this as well. But I haven't put that in the pan yet. So I'll add a bit of milk. And at this point I can judge if I think there's not enough flour in it, because there was a bit more apple than I did the other day. So I'm actually going to add a dash more flour to that. Just about another ½ ounce. Just so it looks a little bit more battery. Okay, so you can see it's thicker than a pancake batter. So I'm going to leave it there, and then I'm going to heat up a dash of oil and probably about an ounce of butter, ½ ounce to an ounce of butter in the frying pan. And then when it's melted, I'm going to pour that melted butter in here. I'm going to swirl around the pan to kind of coat the bottom of the pan so it's ready for frying pancakes in it. But I'm going to pour all the excess butter into here. All my butter melted. I'm just going to swirl it around to coat the pan and put all that warm melted butter in there, and then just mix that into the batter. and then I can make my pancakes. And I'm just going to fry them on both sides until they're cooked. And yeah, have some maple syrup, or in my husband's case, golden syrup with them. And yeah, lunch is sorted. Okay, I've decided to come upstairs this afternoon and hopefully finish this dress. There's only a couple of bits to do, other than finishing off those inner seams around the sleeve, which I have to zigzag the edge of the fabric. But other than that, all I need to do is make some, like a, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like a band. It's not a cuff. Is it a cuff? Is it a cuff if it doesn't fasten? Anyway, like a band on the end of the sleeves, just to encase the end of the fabric. And I think I'm just going to make it probably an inch smaller than the current circumference of the sleeve, just to kind of give it a little bit of shape, but without making them tight, just to finish them off. Maybe do some top stitching, although the way I fit it will probably make top stitching anyway. And I need to sew the hem on the bottom of the dress, and I think that's about it. The dress is quite A-line. I wasn't sure if I liked it. I hung it on the mannequin, well, it's been hanging on the mannequin when not in use most of the time, to make sure the fabric hangs properly, and I wasn't sure how I felt about the A-line shape in a check shirt dress. Originally that's what I'd wanted, but I just wasn't so sure. But having tried it on my body, it actually looks okay. So I think I'll keep the A-line shape, which basically means that the sides, when they hang down further than the front and the back. I would have preferred if the back was kind of the same level as the sides, but if I shorten the sides, it's going to bring it to the same level all the way around the dress, and which I could do. And if I decide down the line that I'm not happy with it, I can always cut the hem and, you know, adjust the hem. But I think I'm going to keep the A-line shape. That's the way I designed it, with the sweep out of the sides of the new look dress that I like the shape of, in comparison to the penny dress, which is more fitted. Well, it's not fitted, but it's more of a classic shape. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut some bits of fabric for these cuffs and get them sewn on, and hem this, double check everything, and then trim the excess fabric from the arm scythe on dress, and zigzag those raggedy edges up. I finally finished the dress. It still has loads of thread ends to snip off, and I did do a zigzag stitch around, it's not going to show very well, but it did do a zigzag stitch around where my raw seams are. I need to trim these back, but I'll have to wait till later on this evening when we're watching TV. I'll trim that up and trim off the million loose threads that I didn't trim off whilst I was sewing, because I always mean to, and I do snip off most of them, but there's always loads that I miss. I had to carry on with the hem, but I managed it. And is it perfect? No. Do I care? No. I'm just glad that it's finished and that I can wear it, or as soon as I've snipped the ends off, I can wear it. The cuffs came out really well. I haven't pressed them because I'm a lazy sewer, but I'm really happy with how the cuffs came out. They came out really nice, so I'm happy with those. And yeah, it's finally done. It is now 10 to 5 and I finished none too soon because I have guild missions at 5 o'clock on my computer game, my one computer game. My guild was 2. We have a thing called guilds, which are basic groups of friends or players that play together, and once a week we meet up to do stuff together in game. So that's what we're doing, and it is 10 to 5 and we meet at 5, so I've timed that pretty well. And then after guild missions I'll be making the soup with the raw squash soup, not the tomato and raw squash one. That was it It was okay. I wouldn't bother making it again. I'd rather have like roast squash where it's just roast squash, or roast tomatoes where it's just roast tomatoes, or tomatoes and peppers. Put them together. They were not greater than the sum of their parts, put it that way. It was okay, it was nice enough, but it doesn't make the cut. So I'll be making soup later because it's nice and quick and easy. And I think that's probably me signing off for this evening, because after that we'll just be watching some TV. Well, a movie of some sort, Halloween movie, and snipping thread ends. So I shall see you tomorrow. Bye bye.